welcome to another episode of Mego Museum's Vintage Mego. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, so I thought I would open with a real popular theme, and that is to dig into my collection of vintage Mego catalogs. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback for the catalog episodes, and, well, to be honest, I like making them, so it's a win-win. The year I've chosen is 1974, and in terms of Mego history, I think it is one of the most important years for the company. They made a lot of interesting product that year, and the next 3-4 years would see unbelievable growth and expansion, but it all really started here. And the success came from a couple of different places. It came from new licenses and from some of the choices they made with their current product lines. So without further ado, let's do a little slideshow, and then I'll give some notes at the end. Get ready for a time warp. So to start things off, this was a turning point for the world's greatest superheroes line. Mego very wisely added new characters in the form of the Super Foes and Super Gals line. It shouldn't be discounted that adding 5 villains to a superhero line really changed the landscape of the action figure toy line. It was very rare for villains to even appear in toy lines. Captain Action had Dr. Evil, and the G.I. Joe did have some enemy soldiers in the 60s, but usually didn't get this many bad guys. But Mego really stumbled onto something with the play pattern of superhero toys. You need conflict, you need guys to punch. This was a huge success. You will notice that the Super Gals in this don't have any boots. In fact, the boots are printed onto their suits. These are known as the silkscreen Super Gals, and this was done as a running change because the tooling for the female boots wasn't available yet. They would eventually change that up, creating what we like to call is a variation that we're still talking about nearly 50 years later. The other important decision Mego made that year was to release 3 Bat vehicles. Marty Abrams actually tells a great story about the Bat vehicles that the Kresge buyer originally ordered 300,000 of each. After getting the first 50,000, the buyer got cold feet and wanted to cancel the order. He requested a meeting with Marty in Detroit to tell him news in person, but by the time Marty got there, the 50,000 were gone. So the order stayed in place, and Kmart and Kresge also wanted to become the Mego Superheroes headquarters. Another huge hit for the world's greatest superheroes that year was the Batcave playset, which was under many Christmas trees that year. Mego would experience their first flop with the superheroes license in the form of the Super Softies brand. These were a series of plush characters in 2 different sizes, one size talking, the other non. And they just didn't take off for some reason. These were made by Mego's subsidiary Samet and Wells, which did make plush characters. When I asked Neil Cublin about this, he just said, "Meh, it was a dud." I'm a collector of these. This is the only time, by the way, that Mego ever did a Lone Ranger toy. They did Lone Ranger in 2 sizes, and it comes with guns that he can't hold and a cowboy hat. It's actually a really well done figure. But for some reason, what is commonplace now, and that is plush superheroes, were not a big hit in 1974. This would be the 3rd and final year for Action Jackson. He did get a new item this year in terms of the Lost Continent playset. Now, I've done an episode about that, and I'll put a link here. A lot of people like to say Action Jackson was a tremendous bomb, but in the toy industry, getting 3 seasons out of something is considered a success. And I think with all the tooling that was reused for other toy lines, Action Jackson can actually be considered something of a success. It was never a big hit, but it was a modest hit. Planet of the Apes was the smash hit for Mego, and it proved that 1973's superheroes were not a fluke. This company was on a licensing hot streak. They famously got this license at the 11th hour and were able to put this line together very quickly. And that was one of Mego's true strengths. They used a lot of Action Jackson tooling to get this done. Now, a couple of interesting notes here. The figures shown in this catalog are very clearly salesman samples. There's a very large hieroglyphic on that Cornelius's chest that does not look like the production version. And if you look at the soldier ape, he has got a very light-skinned face and a hand-sewn belt. These are very early salesman samples. Some of these soldier apes got out. This is likely just like the Silkscreen Supergirls, where they just didn't have the tooling for the bandolier ready yet, but they wanted to get product out the door. And these are some of the very earliest versions. The superstar for Mego in 1974 has to be the Treehouse. Marty Abrams, in our interview for Toy Ventures, said something along the lines of, he thinks he did 16 million with it alone that year. It was one of the most popular items for Christmas of 1974. And it's kind of ironic because it's really the Action Jackson Dynamite house. But because there was a tree house in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, it worked. Subsequently, the Village was also a hot seller, which it is a retooled Bat Cave. I've done an episode about the Village, and I'll leave a link here. And the Action Stallion, which is an Action Jackson piece, is a perfectly logical Planet of the Apes toy for 1974. And if you notice on that box, you've got a Another prototype Soldier Ape. This was a very quickly put together line and one of the most iconic things Mego could have done, and it really put them on the map. 1974 would be the second and final year for Dynah-Mite, but Mego by no means was done with the girls' aisle. A lot of Dynah-Mite's items are actually retooled Action Jackson items, which is exactly what Mattel was doing with Barbie and Big Jim at the same time. One of the rarest Mego action figures out there is Don, Dynah-Mite's boyfriend. He may look slightly familiar to you. I personally don't own a Don. I have never had the opportunity to buy a boxed Don. I really like his window box because it uses the Tarzan font, but they are few and far between, and if you see one, buy it. The Mad Monsters were Mego's answer to not having the Universal Monsters license that famously went to Azrak Hamway. We've done a retrospective of this in Toy Ventures issue 4. I think it is one of the most definitive guides to this line, and I'll leave a link below in the description where you can pick that up. This is one of my favorite toy lines by Mego. It is a beautiful, creative, and crazy line, and I love everything about it. The American West series was added under the World's Greatest Superhero brand, and it was an attempt to, pad out more characters without paying for a license. When I spoke to Marty Abrams about it, he said these just didn't connect with children, and he considered them something of a failure. The most famous item in this catalog for me is the Dodge City playset, which was not produced, but I absolutely would have loved as a kid. I actually had all of the American West as a kid, and I'm very fond of them. It's a beautiful toy line, but I understand where he's coming from. It was a crowded market for Western figures back then, and I just think that this got lost in the shuffle. 1974 would be the final year for Fighting Yank. 12-inch G.I. Joe knockoffs are a reflection of Mego's past and not their future. At this point, the market was getting very crowded with competitors such as Mr. Action, and Hasbro themselves was even knocking off G.I. Joe with a line called Defender. So it just became one of those things where Fighting Yank was also being copied by other companies, and it just makes sense that the company was done with this sort of commerce. That was my look at the 1974 Mego catalog. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to know what toys you remember from it and what your favorite is. You can hit me up here in the comments, or at our Facebook group MegoMania, or at the Mego Museum forums. Thanks as always for watching. If you're new to this, I hope you'll consider hitting like and subscribe. Until next time, talk toys, not others, and be well. Cheers.